Good day, everybody. We were going to do chapter 2 today. This is a demonstration for chapter 2. So here's my teaching notes over on the right. Over on the left will be the work area where we talk about chapter 2. I would call this a topology. It's a network map. We have a layer 2 switch and a PC and another PC. We also have listed underneath an IP address with a notation of /24, and the net 24 is represented with the 255.255.255.0. And then we have two PCs with similar IPs, but slightly different. So what we're first talk about is iOS. So currently, if you have had any experience, you know that we have Windows, we have Mac OS, and we have Linux. Within all of those, the same characteristics happening. We have an OS shell, an operating shell. That's going to be what I'm working in today, the Windows environment, Apple environment, or your Linux environment. The kernel is what the user is sending down. So my mouse movement is going into the kernel, and then the hardware makes the mouse move, things like that. We also have access methods. So the first one we're going to do is going to be out of band through the console port. That means no network. So if we were in lab today, what we would do is go back to the lab and we go to our cables. So down here to the lightning bolt. Second one over, the blue cable is a console cable. Click on that. Click on PC2. Connect it to the RS-232, which is nothing more than a COM port. And most modern computers today don't have COM ports. So we're moving that connection to USB-C. But currently we'll go into the switch and we'll go to the console port. And it's blue when we go into the live lab. So now we have a console cable, an out of bound connection, and now we can start to do things with this device. So we also have SSH, what would be in band. You must have the network set up, and then telnet. You can see that one is encrypted, one is not encrypted. Then we have our primary command modes. So we have our user executive, okay, and that looks like router greater than, switch greater than. Then we have privileged executive mode. Notice that the EXE is capitalized here, and the router has a pound symbol as the switch. So user mode is look only, do not make any changes, and then privilege would be your admin, full admin rights to do anything you needed to. Our configuration modes, okay, we'll talk about config terminal, our global, our interface, and our lines. So let's just go ahead and, if you were in a lab, you would be at your PC at your desk and you'd get into your PC. And in this environment, we're going to go to the desktop, and then we're going to look for terminal. Terminal is an emulator, and we must have these bits per second at 9600, data bits 8, parity none, stop bits 1, and flow control none. If you don't know what these mean specifically, look them up, or you can ask me. So we're going to just click OK here, and now we see just a blank screen, but we can read. Looks like this device booted up. Looks like it has an iOS. And the iOS is this PT software, version 12.1, released in 1986, 2006, relatively an older machine. And then you can see all the hardware here. This is your post test as it boots up. And you finally get to the bottom. One thing you have to do is when you're in a terminal or command prompt, you want to press enter key to get interaction with that device. So you can see that we are in switch greater than, so that's going to be your user mode. And I just want to do real quick question mark. You can see when I hit question mark, it automatically went into exe commands. And so there's how many? 12. So we go into global mode, we do enable, press enter, and now you're at your pound symbol. So now we're at our global config mode, which means we're in config pound. I'm sorry, we're in global mode. Just if we do config T, config terminal, press enter, Now we go to global mode. And then if we wanted to do interface mode, we would go into INT VLAN 1. And notice I went to if. And then we also have line mode, which we'll cover when we configure. So at this point, we're looking at these shortcuts, the exit key. These are all keyboard strokes. So find the exit key on your keyboard. Literally, it's control and then press Z. End, home, arrow keys, the control A, and they do all these things. So at this point, I'm just going to do exit in the window. I press enter to make sure I have activity. Exit, exit, and you can see it takes me back. Config T, and you also have a history. So I'm just going to arrow up to VLAN 1. So the next thing I'm going to do, exit works, but it goes one level at a time. Control Z. I just hit Control Z, and you can see the symbol here. It kicks me right back to config. So it takes me all the way out. So if you have characters, you want to go all the way back to the front, you press the home key. Then you can press the end key, home key, your arrow up and arrow down is your history. Now, if you get into a translating, we want to remember this, Control Shift 6. Okay, right here. This is the one, if you get a typo, it's get in this mode, it could take minutes for it to get out. Okay. So we did connect our rollover to the RS232 console port. Here's your configs. And we kind of did this last class. Enable, config T gets me to privilege mode, host name. So we're going to kind of go over these today, one by one. But I want to show you another way that you can configure this switch real quick. So just minimize this window, click on your switch, and command line. So we actually, this would be considered the GUI, right? This interface with all these wonderful, we can turn on and off and move things and click on tabs. There's your config. We don't really want to do the config stuff. We're always going to stay in command line. And you can see that in command line, it doesn't look much different than PC. Just a different color background. And we can change that in terminal if we wanted to. All right, so we're going to stay with the inbound because we don't have a network set up yet. All right, so I'm going to do Control Z. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and type all these out. But I'm going to do a few lines at a time. Now, in the beginning, copy and pasting it's good for doing quick labs and demonstrations, but you have to learn to type the commands by memory. So remember, you can do this, but you still have to know all the commands by memory for the exams. So config T, make typo, Control Shift 6. All right, config T. Now I'm just going to right click and paste. And notice it put in the commands that I wanted, the three things. Host name, right to the next line, enable secret. This enables secret password. And service password encryption encrypts all passwords. All right, so then let's do interface. So we're going to go to a config if. So once again, I'm in config. I can just right click and paste. Notice once we did VLAN 1, the prompt changed to interface. I put the IP with the subnet mask in, which is actually incorrect. So that should be fixed. Let me fix that real quick. Should be 255.255.0. Remember, it's a 24. All right, so to fix that, what I'm going to do, so once I hit no shutdown, notice that you get message from the actual device, interface came up. So arrow up to the IP and then backspace to get the 255.255.0. Then press enter. So if you make a mistake, you can just retype the command. Okay, so then let's do all the way down to IP domain. Once again, remember that I'm copy and pasting for time. But I also want to show you that if we don't have any typos, anybody can configure anything. If somebody's got to give you a good text file. All right, now let's do this crypto key generate, and we'll talk about the commands in detail as we go, not always all at one time. So paste. Key generate RSA. So we're turning on the encryption process. If we want to do version 2, we must start at 768 bits. Obviously, version 1 stops at 512. So the more bits that we can encrypt, the harder it is for someone to decrypt. So let's go 768, press enter, and then it generates the key. This is a notation, so don't put that in. That'll be a mistake. Let's go ahead and do the SSH commands. Right click, paste. So these are setting up version 2 SSH for inbound access. We're doing retries 2 in 60 seconds. So now we're still in global because it's config. Now we're going to do line. Copy line con. This is your console port. This is what we connected to with the RS-232 and rollover cable. Paste again. So notice that now we're in line, but it just says line. It doesn't say line con. And now we're going to do line VTY. Line VTY sets up your telnet session, which we'll test today. Once again, right click, paste. And notice that the line never changed. So we don't know if we're in line con or line VTY or other lines that we have not talked about yet. And in your banner is your warning message. So you also want to copy that. And so paste. Okay. Control Z kicks me out. I'm going to press enter to get back into my interaction. Important is I'm going to do a copy, run, start right now. So copy, run, start. So the running config is in RAM and I want to copy to the startup just in case the power goes out. I won't lose my config. And then press enter. Anything in the brackets, these square brackets here, means default. You can just go ahead and press enter. If you type a name, it won't let you because you can't change the startup config name. Then the device won't boot. All right, so now we've saved it. So let's exit. So we've completely exited the session. Now the session's done, but I haven't left the terminal. So if I press enter, I go back in. Now you see a warning message. That's my banner we did, and I need a password. And so the line con is line con. Now, when you type your password, you're not going to see it for security reasons. So LINECON. Okay, it worked. So now I need to get into enable. All right, where's my enable password? So the line con was right here. And then my enable password is up here. So I can never type it without a typo. So I'm going to copy paste it. Notice it's not going to show me typing anyways. So now I'm back in. Okay, so what we want to do next. So basically we just configured a network device to have remote access, but we have no access from any devices. So let's go get a straight through cable. So click on your lightning bolt connections, find your copper straight through. I'm going to hold the control key when I click because then I can connect multiple devices. So fast Ethernet, and then connect to the switch. It's using gigabit. And then don't have to reconnect. Notice that I still have it. I can connect PC1 back into the switch. Now this is normal. I'm going to hit escape. It gets me out of that mode. It's normal to have an amber light here because the switch is trying to talk to this device and determine what that device is. It could be another switch. It could be a phone. It could be a server. So about 50 seconds, that'll go green. If you want to fast forward time down here, don't hit the recycle. Power, fast forward. And if you hit that, it'll speed this time up here. All right, so now we have to configure your PC. So if we remember, we configured 10.10.10.2 on the switch. So let's go to PC1. Now, there's a number of ways you can go here to fast Ethernet and do your IP, but then you have to go back to get your gateway. I prefer to go to desktop and IP config. So we're just going to type in the IP. So slide over, 10.10.10.101. Sorry, 101. Now when I hit enter or tab, it automatically defaulted to 255.0.0.0. That is a default class A. We'll talk more about that later, but there is logic to this IP and subnet mask. 255.255. Now, since we don't have a router, we don't have a gateway. So today, we're not putting in a gateway. Most days we have to. All right, so since we did that, the first thing we want to do is then go and test this PC if it can talk to the switch. So now we're going to do in-band communication. So once you go into command prompt, which is not a GUI. So we have ping 10.10.10.2. That's the IP of the switch. We should get a timeout and then a couple of replies. And that's exactly what I can predict. So I always know that I'm going to get a timeout the very first time I try to contact a new device. And if we arrow up, just like that's your history, and if you ping again, you should have 100%. So the first time around, we had 25% loss, 4 sent, 3 received, 4 sent, 4 received, 0 loss. Okay, so now let's configure PC2 with an IP. Oh, whoops, I must have did this earlier. All right, so I put in 10.10.10.100, the 24-bit mask, or 255.255.255.0. We don't need a gateway. Let's go ahead and test. Ping 10.10.10.2. Now we should expect a timeout because this is the first time we try to contact this device, and then we should get our replies. Okay, perfect. So I can anticipate that in this environment. Other environments, we'll talk about if there's going to be more timeouts in those environments. So at this point, now we can test SSH, which means we're going to go not through the console port, right? So once again, terminal is our console port, puts me back in. So I'm closing out a terminal. Command prompts, I'm in the PC. So I'm going to use the command prompt to SSH into the switch. So I'll do SSH and I'm going to press enter because it kind of gives me the syntax. And that's part of what we're supposed to learn tonight. All these commands have syntax, a proper way. So host name has to be a space, and then you have to have your name, enable space, secret space, and then you put your password. So that's your syntax. And so they're saying SSH, this is an L for login. Username, what was our username we put? Admin and username for the password. Okay. So if we do SSH L admin 10.10.10.2. Now this is really good because it's asking for a password. So we're just going to put in username, enable, and then the enable password was, remember, I can't type this without, I have to copy and paste it. I'll waste too much time. Okay, so you're back in. If we do show run, that's your running config. And you can see that there's your host name. And that's how I memorize it. That's how you see my configs. That's how they are. They go straight down. Host name, enable secret, your SSH, username, your virtual LAN, your virtual interface with your IP, your gateway, your banner, and then your line con VTY. So that's how you configure a switch out of band and a switch in band. I will conclude this video and see you soon.